any evidence that like Dominion hacked the voting machines, but there's sure as hell evidence that our intelligence community conspired with big tech to literally control the flow of information in the days and weeks before an election. That's a way bigger threat to democracy than Donald Trump making a joke that you don't like, and yet we don't talk about that. And when we're on the subject of threats to democracy, the craziest thing that happened in the Trump administration, in my view, in terms of threat to democracy is, and there was a New York Times story about this, that the leading generals in our country were lying to Donald Trump about troop redeployments.
That might be true,
so that they could say that we were.
It didn't have to be an emergency evacuation.
Right? They were
we had control. We had military control of the country
from the commander in chief. What they were actually doing with the military, like
we could have evacuated
going back to George
the military
Washington,
last
is civilian control
with
of
all of
the
the equipment.
The elected president is the commander in chief. You had generals, in particular Mark Milley, the Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman, lying to Donald Trump. That's a threat to democracy, not when Donald Trump like makes a joke at a rally.
Who are these people working for if not the president of the United States?
Well, they're working for the permanent bureaucracy. People call it the deep state. Like what the deep state is just when you have an organization that becomes self-perpetuating. These people have military contracts. They have corporate board seats. That all becomes part of who they're really serving. And again, people are good at lying to themselves. Like, do I think that Mark Milley woke up every day saying, "Oh, I'm serving the military-industrial
most
complex.
People don't agree with you, so
board seat."
No, it's I mean.
He was
you can say what you want, but it's still a winning issue for him.
Was the opposite of whatever Donald
and like
Trump
military people, like
but in reality,
Tim
Mark Milley
Kennedy, who was a part of the evacuation teams.
And so when the American people make a decision, you have to respect that decision.
That
even if
that
you
went
like
back
the
to
guy
get
that they
people.
ultimately
He doesn't
elected.
agree with you.
But I really, this
have
is
you
like
heard
this
his
psychological
Rogan
trick that's been
stuff?
played on people like Dick Cheney and Kamala Harris, and I think they're all, they all participate.
Did you hear his episode about that?
Kind of victims of it too. Is that they've convinced themselves that the real threat to American democracy, it's not when like the Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman disobeys the elected president, it's when the elected president does something they don't like. I think that psychological trick is at the heart of a lot of our problems.
Is it going to be difficult to secure a border and to deport people who are here illegally? Some of whom may have committed crimes. Obviously, there's been instances of people who've been murdered by people that are.
I mean, I'm not a military expert.
How does that work?
But Tim Kennedy
are you
is
able to do that. Does that?
I should have taken that bishop. It was dumb. What am I doing? Dude,
I'm
not paying attention.
What would that look like?
I'm having a conversation with you, bro.
All the time, and I joked with a reporter who said, "Well, you can't possibly deport 25 million people. That's too many people." And I said, it's kind of like, you have like a Big Mac and you say, you can't possibly eat that whole thing. It's bigger than your mouth.
Right.
And it's like, well, the way you do it is you take one bite and then a second bite and then a third bite. And that's how I think about deportations here is you start with the most hardened criminals, about 425,000 violent alien criminals. And we know where most of them are because they've committed crimes, right? So you do law.
He has something
you
like
go and
take
get those
here,
people,
right?
You send them back to where they came from, and that's where you start. But then
now he has
you've got to deport illegal aliens. If you're not willing to deport the people who came here illegally, especially those who came here over the last few years, then you're not going to have a border. And it's just basic law enforcement, right? I mean, people reveal themselves as illegal aliens all the time.
Yeah, well, he can just
they try to apply. Like, there's a lot of social security fraud that happens in our country.